Mr. Geir Pedersen, thank you for giving us Al Arabiya news channel this interview. So you are here in Riyadh participating the meeting, the ministerial meeting about Syria. What is the most important things you agreed upon today?
Thank you so much. A pleasure being here together with you. It was a very good meeting. It was the second meeting. As you know, we met 3 weeks back in Aqaba, where I think at the time there were lots of questions about what was happening in Syria. We met only 1 week after the collapse of the Assad regime. Now a few more weeks have passed, and obviously within the international community there were more questions. And this time also the caretaker foreign minister of the new Syrian government was also there. So this was an opportunity for him to listen to the international community and for the international community to be listening to what he has to say and the other way around. So I think it was a very good and very important meeting.
So how do you describe the fall of Bashar al-Assad, and did you know that something is cooking?
I think we were all surprised by the speed and how it happened. I had been warning for years that if a real political process didn't start in Syria, we could risk seeing something dramatic happen. And what started on the 27th of November last year and ended on the 8th of December with the collapse of the Assad regime, I think came as a complete surprise to nearly everyone. And I think this also explains a lot of the questions being asked. We have to remember that HTS, which is sort of the dominant force that took power in Damascus, was actually a UN-listed terrorist group. And the fact that this group is now in charge, of course, raised a lot of questions and I think some nervousness, not only among the international community, but also among Syrians. But then very early on, we heard, of course, very positive messaging coming out from al-Shara in particular, where he emphasized that Syria should be for everyone, for all communities, all religious sects, and that it would be inclusive. The new Syria would be for everyone. Then he also said that they needed to take care of the state institutions, that there should be no collapse of state institutions. And then he said that they wanted to give priority to public services, to security, and so on. And I think this was met with relief, first and foremost from the Syrians, but also from the international community. And then I think the question being asked from many Syrians and from the international community was, would this actually be implemented? And I think we have now witnessed a few weeks, and I think we have a clearer picture.
How do you describe today HTC and how you describe also the relation with Ahmad al-Shara?
I think what we have seen is, frankly speaking, a remarkable development. I think today it is 5 weeks since they took power in Damascus. And of course, they don't control the whole of Syria. That's also sort of an important part of this. But I think the fact that we have relative stability in so many areas is extremely important. So I think while I think many were very nervous that things could start to go wrong very quickly, I think we are now seeing by and large that it has been a positive development, but with a few issues. And of course, outside of the big cities, we have seen what I would call a few security incidents. We have seen some attacks on some of the minorities, which I know that the new caretaker authority is also looking into. And then I think we have seen some questions being raised by the fact that now the caretaker government is basically the same government that came from Idlib. But at the same time, and we heard that today here in Riyadh, is that we are getting assurances that after 3 months, plus minus, there will be a new transitional body that will come after we have had a national conference in Syria. And that this transitional body will be inclusive of all, so that no one should be felt excluded in Syria. And I think that is a reassuring message coming out. So to answer your question, I think we see that there is a lot of challenges. Some of these challenges will be with us for months, maybe years to come, but there is an understanding that we can work together on this. We can work together with the caretaker government, hopefully with the transitional body when that is in place, and the international community is ready to come in fully behind and support the Syrian people.
Do you have a time frame about the stage or the transitional period يعني next stage يعني after the 3 months, and what about the dialogue, who's participating?
Listen, this of course is first and foremost the responsibility of the Syrian people. And what we want to see is that what is leading up to what we call the national conference, the national dialogue, whatever we call it, that this is a really inclusive process that sends a message of hope to the Syrian people, that it is credible and that the Syrian people believe it is credible. Of course, we all understand that things in Syria will not immediately be perfect. You know, in this world, nothing is perfect. But what is important is that it is credible and inclusive, so that the Syrian people are willing to come in and to contribute to how it is developing. And then it is, as I said, up to that national conference, or however they want to organize this, to find some kind of an agreement on the next phase. You know, we have heard different things. I think Al-Shara said in an interview with you that certain things could take 2 to 3 years. Other things, elections, could take longer, 4 to 5 years. But hopefully these are things that will be discussed by the Syrians themselves. And we are here to hopefully be able to support, to give advice, but again, for the Syrians themselves to decide.
There is 2 core principles in the 2254. First, that should be a political transition in Syria that should be led and owned by the Syrian people. Is that possible? And what about Assad?
You're absolutely right. You could say there are 2 core principles in Security Council Resolution 2254. It's about that it needs to be a Syrian-led, Syrian-owned transitional process that should lead to a transitional body.
Sure.
That again will lead to a new constitution and free and fair elections. The second and important principle is the protection of Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity and independence. So these are the 2 important things. But the point with Security Council Resolution 2254 was of course also that it had language about negotiations between the government and the opposition. And this is obviously no longer relevant. There is no one proposing that we do negotiations with Mr. Assad in Moscow. So that's why we are now working on the possibility to see if we can also make some changes and maybe adopt a new resolution. That is up to the Security Council to decide. But I think it would be a good way to sort of to move forward, to tell also the Syrian people that the Security Council and the international community understand that there is a new beginning and that we are willing to work with the Syrian people based on the core principles of that resolution, but that we see that something new is happening. Then on the situation in the northeast, obviously this is a major challenge, and it is extremely important that we find a political solution to this. And I was pleased to hear that there had been a meeting between the SDF and the HTS in Damascus. I understand there is no agreement yet, but hopefully we will give it time so that it could develop into a political solution. That means that all of Syria is now united behind the possibility of have a new beginning for all Syrians, all communities.
So the second core principle, you talk about it, the protecting the sovereignty and independency and the safety of the Syria lands. Okay, so if this principle is still alive and we are seeing the daily Israeli incursions into the Syrian lands?
I'm afraid you're absolutely right that we are seeing a daily violation from the Israeli government against Syria. And I've said many times, and I can repeat it now, this needs to stop. The violation of Syria's sovereignty, the invasion, the occupation of new land is in violation of international law and the principle that the UN is based on. It's not only that, but it is also happening at a time when we have what I would call a critical transitional process in Syria. And instead of complicating that, all neighbors should show a positive interest in seeing that we have stability and a new beginning for Syria. So this is a huge responsibility also on the Israeli side.
If Mr. al-Shara do what they are saying, that want an inclusive process with all the parties in Syria, then you believe it's the right time to remove the sanction, and what are the guarantees we'll ask for?
No, I think this is a very important question. And yes, I really do believe that if we now see a truly inclusive political transitional process that leads to an inclusive transitional body, and with the process leading to a new constitution and a new elections, hopefully, then yes, there is, I think, a deep willingness from the international community to come in and to help. And at least I can promise, I will do then my utmost to make sure that sanctions will be lifted. Because we know very well that if sanctions is not lifted, it will not really be possible to rebuild Syria. So we need to see two things, that the transitional process is moving forward and that the international community respond to that. But I can tell you, after listening to my colleagues from the international community here today, I'm confident that this should be possible to achieve. I'm not saying that it will be, an uncomplicated process. There are always hiccups in processes like this. But we need to be very clear on this, that this is absolutely necessary to be able to see that we start to see the rebuilding of Syria, that will end the poverty that so many are now living in. We have now close to 17 million people in Syria in need of humanitarian assistance. And as you know, we want Syrian refugees to be able to return. We have now maybe had 500,000 since the 400,000 came from Lebanon. We have a little bit more than 100,000 after the 8th of December. So more than 500,000 people coming in, all of them needing, humanitarian assistance. But we need to make sure it's sustainable. And that can only happen if we are really rebuilding Syria. And that needs a lot of international support, new businesses, and the end of sanctions.
The Guardian newspaper published a report about a few days ago about the next stage of Syria, and you are supporting a democratic transition, but you are facing resistance from within the country because because the UN is unpopular and there is no trust about the UN. Because also the UN let down the Syrians. How do you respond to this talk, and how do you reassure the Syrians?
I think we have to be honest and to say that we all let the Syrian people down during the 14 years or close to 14 years of war and conflict. We were not able to really live up to the expectations of the Syrian people when it comes to nearly everything. And after the collapse of the Assad regime, we have now seen all the brutality that regime brought through. So it's understandable that there is a lot of anger against the international community. And I would say it was an international, I think a collective failure. And of course the UN is part of that. And for many, we are the face of that. And there is only one way out of that. And that is to start to rebuild trust. And the way we can do that is to say that we are here now to serve the Syrian people, hopefully in close coordination and cooperation with first the caretaker authority and then with the new transitional body. And as I said, I think the international community is united now behind a willingness to come behind and to support the new Syria. And why is that? Because I think no one can afford that Syria do not succeed. The Syrians can't afford it, and the international community can't afford it. So here there is a joint interest in trying to move forward.
So the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, with its regional and international influence, how do you describe its role in establishing the new Syria?
I think the fact that we met in Riyadh today at the initiative of the Kingdom, I think says a lot. I think it re-emphasizes what I have emphasized already, that there is a willingness from Syria's neighbors, from the Gulf states, and from the broader Arab region to make sure that Syria succeeds. And I think the message from Saudi Arabia today was that they want to be at the forefront of that process. And I think that is welcome by everyone to see this. And in my discussions today with the Saudi authorities, I think we agreed that there is a huge potential, there are many challenges, and that we can only solve it if we work together. We work with the Syrians, and we work together as an international community.